fellow travelers, welcome on in. This is the 146th level of the RPG Cave. I'm one of your hosts, the level 199 human Dark Lord Ryan Turford, and I am joined, as always, by the level 199 elf battle alchemist, Dr. Garret Bland. How's it going, Garret?
I'm doing good. I am waking up at this wonderful Saturday morning, both of us, because I know you work late and then now you wake up. Decent hour for me, but for you, it's pretty early, so.
I mean, Garret, when you factor in the time dilation, because even though you're 3 hours behind me, I feel like you and I now on Fridays probably go to the bed around the same time.
Yeah,
because when I go to bed, Garret, it's now like 1 o'clock for you.
Yes, I go to bed probably around 12 to 1 o'clock. Somewhere around there.
So we go to bed at the same time. So we're both pretty tired this morning, but we're excited to get him in. First of all, Garret, I just want to give you props because last week I was unable to make the show, but you and Seth did a fantastic episode about Maper Story.
Oh, thank you so much. It was super cool to have Seth over and talk about this game because I know a lot of people actually didn't know about this Maple Story at all, and it's cool to just have a conversation with Seth about it, especially his perspective and his experience with it. And still going on. I have it Maple Story installed on my laptop, so I'll probably play it sometime. Just to see where it's at these days, because it's probably totally different. But at the same time, seeing all the animations and everything, very nostalgic. For sure. So, yeah, it was super cool to talk about it.
Nice. So, I'm glad you guys had fun. Because, it was a good episode. And so thank you very much for filling in for me last week. And for Seth, of course, thank you for hopping on the show with us. I appreciate you. But now, of course, we should probably clear the dungeon before we get to all those read ups. Garret, I know you have three things.
I do have three things.
We'll get to that in a second, though.
Yeah,
first of all, if you're watching the show right now on youtube.com/carpoolgaming, or if you're watching the video on demand later, don't forget to hit that like button, kick that subscribe button, and roll a D20 and let us know what you rolled on that D20 in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. Also, if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to rate us if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And also, just hitting that subscribe button definitely helps go a long way as well. Also, if you want one big podcast feed with the entire Carpool Gaming cinematic universe on it, head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Carpool Gaming. Of course, we got the Pants Patreon podcast with Patrons podcast with Bowser, I believe, which is this week's episode. That'll be up tomorrow. And then we have someone else on Monday.
I think I'm coming up soon. I think I'm like first week of August, so I'm excited to do it.
Yeah, so look out for that. Of course, our first episode of Campfire, our brand new Patreon exclusive podcast, is out right now on the Patreon as well, so make sure to go grab that as well. Also, we have our website, carpoolgaming.com, where you can get yourself an RPG Cave t-shirt or some other merch, including our Summer Game Fest merch, which is still going on until the end of the month. But we also have some new merch to celebrate Campfire as well. So you can definitely check that out on the website as well. And now, Garret, I now throw it to you for your three things, man.
Well, the first thing, and I won't show it to you and yank it out, but I did get an Xbox memory card on my Series X. It was Prime Day and got it on sale. It's still overpriced compared to, let's say, an SSD for internal SSD for a PS5, but still not a bad price. It was like $120 or something like that for a 1 terabyte. Put that thing in, instantly filled it up. The game, I don't know, maybe the game file sizes for consoles is a little bit larger than PC, but I see some of these games like, oh yeah, it's Dying Light 2. That'll be 170 gigabytes, and I'm like, what are you doing to this game to put so much, I don't know, memory in there? And I guess, it's 4K visuals and overhead and stuff like that. But anyways, I feel more free now that I have an extra terabyte on my Xbox. I'll be able to play Call of Duty later this year. So at least there's that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the selling point right there. Being able to install all of Call of Duty, you need a memory card for it. Especially it's funny because if you actually want to install everything that Call of Duty has, you can't install it on a Series S hard drive because it's bigger than a Series S hard drive with this year's version.
Yeah, because they're going all out with this year's Call of Duty. They got campaign, they got zombies, and they
Yeah.
got multiplayer. So,
Well, not
yeah.
only that, but the Call of Duty client is always updated with all the versions. So it's just like
I see.
you install it, you install all the games going all the way back to like, not
Modern
Black Ops Cold
Warfare?
War, but Modern Warfare 3, I
1.
believe.
Oh, 3. Oh, okay.
Or maybe no, it's one game before that. Whatever the game before Modern Warfare 3 was.
It could be Vanguard.
Maybe. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't
That's Call of Duty. That's not an RPG, Garrett. We probably
Anyways,
don't need to figure that out here.
the second thing, I'm praising my coffee because I don't know. I guess I have an addiction to caffeine a little bit.
A little bit.
I can't really drink, or like I can't go throughout the day without coffee unless it's like emergencies or whatever. If I don't have a coffee in the morning, that's okay. But really, it hits me around 2 to 3 p.m. If I don't have a coffee by then, headaches, and I get withdrawals or whatever. But anyways, praising coffee here. I think I've mentioned this before. I got a latte bevel machine, so espresso maker and lattes and cappuccinos. Never going back to drip coffee or anything like that. Maybe I should get one of those, I don't know, funnel kind of natural coffees, because I know some coffee beans are better for drip coffee compared to espressos. But anyways, praise coffee.
Praising the coffee. Excellent. Love it.
Third thing, stretch out on gaming. I'm tackling mini games, and I probably shouldn't have, but I'm doing that anyways. I got Trials of Mana on Switch. It's been good while I've been watching shows on the couch. And then I've been playing Humanity on Xbox. That's been good. I'm over halfway done with that. I only played like a few puzzles, and then like I'm done for the day. And then the third game I'm playing is Hogwarts Legacy, which has been super fun. Probably one of the stronger RPGs I've been playing this year, and we could talk about that later. So
I was gonna say it's so funny because, like, again, you were talking about that all year last year, how excited you were to play it, and you just couldn't get around to it last year.
I feel like there's so many games like that. Like it's just like, oh my god, there's Elden Ring or whatever, and I'm like, I need to play it. No, not yet. There's like 20 other games I want to get to. So.
Will Avowed be that game for you this year, Garrett? I wonder.
I think Avowed would be a day one for me. I tend, with Game Pass, I tend to go for it like day one, but we'll see how it goes.
That's true, because I guess you're not worried about the barrier of the price or anything. So
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my 3 things.
That's so many games. That's too many games right now. I can barely get through just doing my dailies in Final Fantasy 14 and then playing The Lord of the Rings: The Third Age on the GameCube. Like that's almost too much for me right there.
Well, granted, the Humanity was really for Game Pass Quest type of deal. So I really just play enough in order to get an achievement, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like, and Humanity is one of those games where it's a puzzle by puzzle game. So you can really just like, after you're done with like 2 or 3 puzzles, you're just like, I'm going to stop for now and wait till tomorrow. It's more of those, brain twisters. The Trials of Mana, that's really when I'm on the couch right next to, sitting next to my wife, watching shows. I'm able to like take my mind off a little bit. But Hogwarts Legacy is probably my main game I'm playing. So there you go. That's why I'm. But you're right. I'm stretched out on gaming. This is the max.
I also just very acutely picked up on the fact that you also didn't say Final Fantasy VII Classic either. So I'm just like I'm just sitting over here just doing this, just shaking my head at you. I'm like, oh.
I don't know why Trials of Mana hit me first.
But Trials of Mana is really good. So I mean, I can't really fault you too much for it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, after Trials of Mana it's Final Fantasy VII Classic on the Switch. So can't wait.
Also, just throwing it out there because I know I haven't really been on another podcast this week, so I haven't been able to mention it. I am actually almost finished the Third Age. I'm on like I have like 2 chapters left to go, so I'm pretty close to the end of that game as well. So I'm gonna be
the Lord of the Rings game.
Yeah,
it looks cool. So it's an RPG.
It's a turn-based role-playing game.
Interesting.
In a lot of ways, it's very similar to a Final Fantasy game. Like it feels like it's a JRPG, but in Lord of the Rings. But it's also, again, this is back when Lord of the Rings games were based off the movie and not the books. So it has like all the accoutrements from the Lord of the Rings movies. Like it has like all of the characters and their voices from the movie. You've got like these like 107 unlockable little movies that talk about the lore in the world that you're visiting, but they're all narrated by Ian McKellen as Gandalf. So he does like the Gandalf voice, and it's like, I'm just like, I want Gandalf to read me a bedtime story every night, because
that's wonderful.
It's so soothing, but it's so, again, it's so cool. Not only that too, but again, the music when you're in combat and stuff, it's like the battle music from the Lord of the Rings movies and stuff like that, which just gets you like all kinds of hyped if you're into the Lord of the Rings movies at all.
Who's the developer for this?
Believe it or not, Garrett, Visceral Games, the Dead Space developers.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, I just looked it up. It was EA Redwood Shores.
That is what they were called before they were renamed to Visceral.
Interesting.
Yes, because when they put out Dead Space, that's when they renamed the studio, because they were like, all right, we're on Dead Space all the time and nothing else.
And Dead Space, when did that come out? 2006 or
2007.
Okay, so just a few years later.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, not a few years later. The Third Age is not a super late game on consoles, but you're right, like 2005. So actually, you're right, a few years later.
And I'm just saying, oh, here's the comparisons and influences of Lord of the Rings, Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy IV, like stuff like that.
Exactly.
So,
like it's got like all the stuff that you would expect from a Final Fantasy game. What's interesting is like the way your characters learn skills in this game, where you basically learn new skills not by getting like XP or something, but by using your skills. And then it has like this branching tree where you have to choose which skill you want to kind of earn between two, and it kind of gives you a description of what each one does. So you have like a lot of customization about like how your characters are really, how they develop in that game in an interesting way. Because you can, like, me and someone else could have totally different builds for our characters and go through the game very differently. So
interesting.
Yeah,
and
it's a cool game.
It's a PS2, Xbox, and GameCube.
Yeah. It's one of those games too where I'm just like, I wish they would do like a remaster for modern consoles for something like this, but I just know that they never will at this point. It's kind of in the same bucket as the other two Lord of the Rings games from this generation, The Two Towers and Return of the King, which are also both really good, and those are like more like beat 'em up action games. Like those games, I think those two games will just never see the light of day again. Which is
and they're not on PC, so
no.
That's rough.
Yeah, but
cool.
Yeah. Anyways, that's Lord of the Rings: The Third Age. I think it's a cool game, but I'll be talking about that more probably on PlayStation Drive, because I think like after today, I might finish it either today or tomorrow. So
nice. Sounds good.
I know. Well, anyways, Garrett, it is now time to read from the sacred texts, because it's that time, folks. We are officially a little over halfway through 2024.
Crazy.
If you can believe it, Garrett. We're more than halfway to New Year's, Garrett, when you think about it.
I can't believe that. I remember playing Baldur's Gate 3 back in December, January.
Yeah.
Streaming, talking with you, playing together. Boom. 6-7 months later. Now we're here. Insane. Time flies, man.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Time flies when you're having fun. So, of course, we're going to do what we usually do, of course, which is we always usually, like, at the midway point, we like to get, like, a temperature gauge as to, like, what our personal favorite RPGs that we played this year are. Now, of course, for folks that are new to the Carpool community, the Carpool community Game of the Year show is never about just only the games that came out this year. But because we play a lot of games, as you've just heard from other years as well, we will also not only highlight games that came out this year, but also our favorite games that we just played this year in general. So this could be, any of the old games. Lunar might make Garrett's list. You never know. We'll see.
Never know.
We're going to find out. But it could be anything, as one might say. So we're going to go back and forth. And none of that, but I added a new dimension, Garrett, this year. We're going to talk about then... after we talk about our favorite games, we're also going to talk about the best RPGs so far, according to OpenCritic. and see.
Oh, okay.
Because like, since I know that you and we've talked about this before, we haven't been able, like this year, we just haven't played as many games from this year as usual, I think.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that the games that we haven't played get their due, that are like high reviewing ones. So we'll talk about them. And then of course we're going to tee up the rest of the year. So that's kind of the schedule.
The schedule of
the
the
sketch
episode.
for the rest of the show. So
Cool.
let's get into it. Let's start, of course, with our favorite games that we've played so far this year. So Garrett, hit me with, we're going to do 3 of these. So Garrett, hit me with one of your 3 favorite games that you've played so far this year, my friend.
Well, I didn't start it this year, but I started it last year, but finish it in the beginning of the year. A spin-off of one of our favorite franchises, Persona 5 Tactica.
Nice.
And it's a great tactical role-playing game. I would say it's really, similar to Mario plus Rabbids. I think there was a lot of influences compared to that, and it was just, Atlus's own kind of version of that, but they add a little bit extra mechanics to it in terms of just formations of the groups, and different strategy within the levels and stuff like that. But I really enjoyed this game. It was a little slow in the beginning, but I think it really picked up mid-game in the pacing. But yeah, overall, Persona 5 Tactica, I'm glad to go back to the characters and seeing a different story and adding a slightly new characters in there. Overall, the story is just fine. I wouldn't say it's like, oh, it's a really, really good story. It's like really similar to, the Persona 5 Strikers. It's just like, okay, that's another story within the Persona 5 world. Cool. That's, it's just another fun level. For people who want to get into Persona 5, I would say this one, I think it's pretty easier and shorter of an RPG, so it could be a good entry point. Maybe the story, you may not get the full of it just because there are already established characters in there and personalities, but it is a 30 to 40 hour experience. It's not 110 or 120 hour experience like Persona 5. So it could be a good entry point for people who want to get in the series and love, let's say, a tactical role-playing game like Mario plus Rabbids. So, I just want to shout out Persona 5 Tactica.
That's a good one to shout out, because that was a game that I also really enjoyed last year. And to more on your point, Garrett, as to where to start with Persona 5. If the base game of Persona 5 is a little too daunting, knowing that it's more than 100 hours to play through, then I think this is definitely a better place to start than something like Strikers is. Because Strikers, story is just basically a straight up it's almost a sequel to Persona 5. So you'll be even more lost with the story, and the gameplay isn't as good as Tactica. So I definitely think of the two, Tactica for sure is the better place to start with Persona 5 if you want to get into it, if you just don't want to just hop right into Persona 5 itself. Right. But yeah, this is a game I really enjoyed last year too, Garrett. So I'm glad you gave it a shout out here, and also a game that I feel like just so many people missed last year.
Yeah, no, totally missed it. I think even a lot of the people who played Persona 5 totally missed this game. It's like, oh, there's another spinoff? All right, whatever. That's pretty much how that happened. And I see it on sale now occasionally. So
Skycatcher Reflections asked an interesting question in chat here, Garrett. Are there any big spoilers in Tactica? And the answer to that is no. Because other than the party members that you recruit, if you don't want to know, if you don't want to look at the front cover of Persona 5 and see the party members you recruit, that's it. That's the only spoiler.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. No, you're right. I think it's really just the characters.
Because it's its own story. It's very, very, very separate from Persona 5.
Yeah, you don't get any, because they're really just the gang together and then their own interactions. They don't really pull so much from the original game. Yeah, exactly.
Plus where it takes place, I believe before the ending happens. So
yeah, it's before the ending. I do want to mention that the villains, or not the villains, some of the important characters in there, the important character in there is coming from the base game.
Yeah.
He's not. I don't think the character's important.
No, he's literally a background character you see on TV.
Yeah. So if you worried about that, sure. But yeah, as you said, no major spoilers.
No.
In this game. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I think it's easier to recommend, like way easier to recommend than something like Strikers, because Strikers again actually does talk about spoilers from the base game. So because it is meant to be a sequel, whereas this is very different.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's my first game. What about you, Ryan?
Nice. Well, sticking with Persona, Garrett, my third
Cool.
favorite game of the year, which is probably going to make your list too.
Yeah.
Is Persona 3 Reload. I have to put it here at number 3. It was one of the games I was most excited about coming into this year. I was already a huge fan of Persona 3 because it was already, I was on record before this year saying that it was my favorite Persona game. But Persona 3 Reload, Garrett, was so good. Like all the improvements they made to both the visual design, the combat, and just everything about the overall feel with Persona 3. They did an amazing job with, and I'm so excited because the DLC is coming out soon. Operation I guess.
Oh man,
that's coming
totally
out next
forgot
month.
about that.
Yeah. Because that's coming out in September. So I am excited to go back to it because I've been wanting to go back at some point to do the trophy cleanup because I don't have the platinum, but I'm so close to the platinum. I'm literally 2 trophies away from the platinum trophy for Reload. So I was planning on doing like a one big run with the DLC to get that.
Cool.
So yeah, I'm excited to play that. But yeah, Persona 3, even though it wasn't everything that I hoped it would be, like them taking all the content from all the different versions and putting into one version. I do think it's the definitive way to play Persona 3 going forward. And it will be always the one I recommend to people. Because before, we always had that question out there, well, which one of these 3 versions of Persona 3 do I play? Right. And it was always like well, if you want this, you should play this version, but it doesn't have this. So maybe play this version instead because it has this other stuff. Whereas now it's just like, nope, just play Persona 3 Reload. I think that's the obvious answer at this point. Yes. Atlas knocked it out of the park with this one. And it's easily one of my favorite RPGs to come out this year.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, yeah, it was on my list too. It would be the next game I would mention for sure. So right there with you, Ryan. I really enjoyed Persona 3 Reload a lot. It was fun to get back into a Persona game because it's been a while. Or a base Persona game,
Right.
Going through dungeons and going through the characters and figuring out relationships. And overall, they did a really good job of, let's say, modernizing a lot of the game and its mechanics and going through the dungeons. I understand people were a little bit bored by Tartarus.
Yeah.
Because it is, it's procedurally generated. It's going through dungeon by dungeon. It's not as, I would say, interesting as Persona 5's.
Yeah, they're not like handcrafted like the other Persona dungeons.
Yeah. But at the same time, I really enjoyed the turn-based combat of Persona games. That's what, other than the relationships and going through the story, it's the combat that really draws me back into playing it so much. And they just did a really good job. I was really actually amazed with the animations in general, the style of the game, the music. It's they really brought it to life, and especially the all-out attacks and having those victory character poses at the end. I'm like, that looks so good. Yeah. And they look, it looks like they went back to Persona 3, like, let's understand the mood, let's understand the style, and that's and just bring it up to the modern age. And I think they knocked it out of the park with that. So I was also one achievement away from 1,000 gamer score. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go back and replay this to get that one achievement. I think it's it was the assistant to the I don't know, she's the assistant of the place, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And I have to get I don't know, so many requests.
Oh, Elizabeth's requests. Okay.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. I ran out of time before I was able to do anything. And my guide did not tell me to start the request earlier. So
yeah, that would do it. Cause like I didn't follow a guide. So the only one I missed was the social links one, just because I didn't get them all done in time.
The social links was hard. I barely made it even with the guide.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if people out there wanting to do 100% runs, there's spoiler-free guides. This was actually the first time I did a guide telling me step by step and then telling me which decisions to make in the conversations. And it is a different experience for sure compared to what I did with Persona 5, which is I did whatever I want. I personally like it more than doing it freedom of choice because it gives me more linearity in my decisions with the game. I know I'm not missing anything. That's just how I feel when I just have a choice given to me with these games. But to each their own. Of course, you should play it however you want and enjoy it the best you can. But that's just for me. That's just how I like it.
And I think that you've got a good thing going on there, Garret. Because I think that's a good way of approaching that. Because although it begs the question, then do they even need to program choices into the game at all at that point? Then, if we're all going to take that route, but it's interesting to see sometimes what because sometimes your choices have no consequences on the conversation at all, or sometimes they can have drastic consequences. So it's interesting to see how the conversations change based on the choices. But you're right. Like in most cases, most people just want to get the maximum out of it. So then that way you can make sure to get to all the characters and learn all their stories. Because a lot of the character stories in Persona 3 of all the NPC characters are actually really good. So it's interesting to go through a lot of them.
For sure. Yeah, you can miss a lot if you don't max out all the relationships or whatever. It's just, you got so many systems. You're on a schedule. There's and the characters and their conversations are on a schedule. You have a limited amount of time. Now, let's say if it was unlimited. Let's say you beat the game. It's like, okay, now you can just
which is what I'm going to do when I go back, because I'm going to do New Game Plus, which means I have all my social stats maxed, so then I can just worry about talking to people.
Yeah. So you could do it like that for sure. I'm curious, with episode, I guess, is it going to be like an after the main game?
It is after the campaign ends. Yes.
Okay, so if I already beat the game, I should just start that save file up.
Yep.
Okay, and it should go straight into it, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I mean, that's how it worked in the original game, like in Fez. So I imagine they're going to do the same thing here.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Can't wait.
Because I was going to say, because that's like literally the second half of the game is the answer from Fez. So I imagine they're going to do the same thing with this, which is why I'm so excited about it, because it was really, really good in the FES version, and it answers a ton of questions too. Like if you had questions after the credits rolled, like it answers a lot of them. And it's actually like a pretty good thing. I think in the original game too, it was like 30 hours to finish.
Wow.
So I imagine it's going to be like a big chunk for this version as well.
Another video game.
Yeah, basically. It kind of is. It kind of is actually. But
so cool. Well,
nice.
that's my game number 2 as well. So I just had to, put that on the list. So Ryan,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I stole it from you, but I'm glad we could have a good conversation about it, because my number 2 game is actually the most recent RPG that I played. And that, not Lord of the Rings. I'm currently playing that, but it's not finished yet. The most recent RPG I finished, that is Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail. Now, people are probably surprised that this is not my number 1, but I enjoyed Dawn Trail a lot. I think there's a lot of great things about it, but I think the fact that it's in kind of my number 2 spot is kind of the reason why, like, it's just a testament more to how good my number 1 choice is. But Dawn Trail, I think, was a really good expansion from top to bottom with its MSQ. Now, I know a lot of people didn't love the beginning part where you're going around, you're kind of learning kind of the cultures of this island, Tyrell, that you're going to. But I actually liked that aspect. Like I liked going around and learning how the giants live versus like the merchant tribes and the Hanu, which are these like parrot people, like how their lives and their cultures differentiate from one another, like what type of foods they eat and stuff like that. Like I thought all that stuff was like really interesting world building that you just don't see in RPGs like this. So I like the fact that they did just something very different with this one, because the last couple Final Fantasy 14 expansions were all just like big doom and gloom, end of the world's happening, and you kind of have to stop it. Whereas this time is like, right, you're kind of on a vacation in this one.
Nice.
And yes, like I know there's a lot of criticism as well about how the beginning part of the story is not about your character. It's about Wook-Lamont, who's kind of this other character, and you're kind of like the story is more about her than about you. But I actually didn't mind that. Because, when I play other RPGs as well, like I'm not, the main character doesn't always have to be the focus of the story, and I'm okay with that too. Because I like, especially if the other characters are interesting enough. So I like that. But once the story really gets going, it's really, really good. Like the back half of it is very, very solid. But also the dungeon and enemy design is just top notch. It's the best in the series at this point, with some really incredible like looking bosses, but also mechanically they're very interesting as well, where it's less about looking at like big glowing circles on orange circles on the ground to avoid, and more looking at the boss and kind of reading their movements in order to dodge things, kind of like an action game or something. So I think they totally nailed the encounter design, and that's compounded even more with kind of the latest raid series that just released last week. So I'll be playing more Dawn Trail, of course, for the months to come. But the main story for Dawn Trail, I have to slot in this number 2. And of course, it's enough of a game, Garrett, to basically be its own game, because it was like 45 hours to finish. So
my goodness,
that's the length of a lot of RPGs right there. So yes, Final Fantasy 14 Dawn Trail, slam dunk from Square Enix, of course, with another great expansion this time around. It's definitely not my favorite, but it's definitely. It was definitely a good change of pace, and I think I love the direction they're going with the story for the next couple of installments.
Yeah, it sounds like this latest expansion, it's kind of the beginning of a new adventure or whatever, and it was kind of because the previous expansion was like the ultimate closing of a major arc within the game. So I'm hearing people playing Final Fantasy 14. I've been listening to a podcast talking about it as well. Had very similar thoughts as you in terms of just, the monsters and the missions and the gameplay is really, really good. But the story can be underwhelming to some people as well. So, it's cool to see that, it's still having fun and it's still Final Fantasy 14 for you guys. I keep seeing on my Fantasy Critic, that game, I don't know what happened to it. It was like a 90 Open Critic initially.
But that was only with 3 reviews.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, as more reviews have come out for it, the score has gotten kind of lower and lower, but it's still like in the 80s. It's just
it's like 80s now, like 80 solid or 81, something like that.
But I believe it is the lowest scoring Final Fantasy 14 expansion. Yeah. Just because again, like from the things I talked about, it's very divisive, because there's people like me who really enjoyed it, and I think a lot of the more like hardcore Final Fantasy 14 story people are more into it, but I think a lot of the more casual people, or just I do think there's just people in general who really got into Final Fantasy 14 with Endwalker or Shadowbringers that are just not liking it as much, because again, it is they're trying something very different with it. And honestly, I'm glad that they did, because if they just did the same thing again, like it would feel samey to me, and it might be criticized even more heavily so for just doing this, just recycling the same ideas over and over again. Like I appreciate that the team took the effort to try something different, because we just don't see that, I think, enough with modern games.
And I'm glad you can use a paintbrush as a weapon.
Yes. Destroy enemies with paint. That was my character.
Like Splatoon. There we go. Cool, man. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I see you post about it all the time too.
Yeah.
On Twitter. Yeah. I really enjoy seeing your adventures as you max out your jobs.
We also bought a house. Carpool Gaming has a house in Final Fantasy 14.
Nice.
Called
Cool.
Carpool Gaming Place.
Do you have your own like room, and do you decorate it?
I do have my own room, and I can decorate, but the house we have to actually decorate from scratch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a whole component of getting furniture for the house that Bowser and I are currently in the process of decorating it, but like we kind of used a lot of our money just to buy the house, so it's going to take us a couple months to upgrade things. But then we also built like a bay for a submarine and for our own airship. So we're going to
Wow.
build like a submarine at some point and go like on like underwater adventures and stuff like that. That you can only do if you have a house. So it's some interesting stuff. But yeah, like anyone in the Carpool Gaming free company, if you're part of that in the game, you can get an apartment in our house. Like you get a little room in the house.
Is this is this console specific, or is it cross?
No, it's cross progression across PC, Xbox, and PlayStation.
And cross play as well.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah, because Bowser plays on Xbox and I play on PlayStation.
Cool. That's really cool. How many people are in the house now?
Not many. We actually only have 3. It's Bowser, myself, and Drellesh. But it's just we just don't have too many people in the community that play. So, but if people do want to play and they want to be part of the free company, just hit me up. In fact, in the Discord, we have in the playlist section, we have a Final Fantasy 14 section with all the details about how to join the free company and whatnot.
I might put it on the old Xbox and just check it out there.
Give it a whirl.
Give it a whirl.
Yeah, I know. Like for you, it would be a huge time sink because you just wouldn't have time to get through the whole story.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
It's like 200 hours to get to
No.
just the end of the free trial, and then to get to Dawn Trail, like you're looking at another like.
That's still
200
so
hours on
insane to
top
me.
of
I see the time cards on Twitter. It's like, oh yeah, you can play Final Fantasy 14 for like 3 months. And I'm like, but Ryan keeps telling me you can play like 200 hours of this game for free. So
That is also true. Like as long as you don't buy the game and play the free trial version, you can play up to the end of Stormblood, which according to how long to beat, Garrett. If you want to get to the end of Stormblood, you're looking at 196 hours.
my goodness,
Yeah.
that's so much. But
Yeah, because the base game itself is about 50 to 60 hours, and then the post game content, that's about 30 hours, and then Heaven's Ward and Stormblood are like 40 to 50 hour expansions.
yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
There you go.
I might still, just put it on there
Yeah,
just to see.
just try it because I know Ron tried it too. So and he was really enjoying it, but he's also just like he's like, I can see the time sink. I can see this game pulling me, and I will never play other games if I play this.
I think I was taken aback, and this is just a me thing. Even when I played WoW, I don't really care for out of scope third person viewing, and then a bunch of just like mechanics and buttons and skills at the bottom. I don't know why I don't like that. I don't care for that as much as to let's say a first person mode like Elder Scrolls Online, and then as well as Maple Stories with 2D, right? So it's just a kind of a side scroll. I don't know why, but that's just a me thing. But we'll see.
Yeah,
how it goes.
No worries. And yeah, like maybe playing on a controller might help with that too, because like
That's
maybe
true.
that'll leave things, because maybe it's just like maybe it's more daunting when you're in front of a keyboard and you've got like 24 keys worth of commands to do. Whereas 14, they've done a good job of keeping the skills to like kind of a baseline, like kind of keeping them to a minimum, and then mapping it to a controller is actually pretty easy to do. So yeah, I think that game is a good place to hop in. Cool. But yeah, I'm interested to hear what you have to say about that. But Garrett, I'm more interested to hear what your number one game is. Huh? Do you like that segue?
I like that segue. I didn't really rank these. I would say Persona 3 Reload is my favorite RPG, but this is another one that's like I wanted to highlight for sure. And that's and I played it this year, but it got released I think last year. It's Fuga Melodies of Steel 2.
Okay.
By CyberConnect, I believe.
Yeah, it is CyberConnect. Yeah.
So this is a turn-based tank game where you kind of go through with a story of characters throughout this kind of war between these factions or whatever, and you're chasing down this enemy tank, this enemy villain or whatever. And basically, what you do throughout the game, you recruit new characters as you go along, and then you can build relationships between the characters themselves, and then you kind of manage it's like its own kind of hub. The tank is its own hub with like you got to make raise animals, you got to sleep, you got to increase the ammo and armor of the tank or whatever, which is really cool. But then you get into the combat, the turn-based combat, and then there's certain enemy types that it's weak and strong against certain weapons. Of course, each character has certain skills that you can kind of use throughout the game. The turn-based combat is very similar to, let's say, Child of Light, where it's like you have a little bar in the like at the top, and depending on when your player meter goes all the way to the end, they go first. It kind of just stops, and it's like, okay, you can go and make your turn or whatever. They did an absolute fantastic job at. I would say the story. Also, there's a lot of consequences with like certain. You can lose characters permanently throughout the game, so you got to be very careful. And depending on which characters you lose throughout the game, you get a very different ending as well. So I got like a kind of normal ending, but you can get a pretty bad ending if you lose enough characters in there. But anyways, I really enjoyed this game top to bottom. On paper, it seems like when you look at the animations and everything, it looks simple, but there is a lot of care and crafting and complexity with the story as well as the turn-based combat. I think they did a really good job. So I wanted to give this one a shout out. I love the art style. What they do with each chapter, what they do is I think they commission an artist to do a rendition of the game and their characters. So each chapter has its own like art style, which is super cool. Like just kind of a screenshot at the end. But yeah, overall, really enjoyed this game. This was, I think, one of the hidden gems. I think Fuga Melodies of Steel is not talked about at all. So,
I was just going to say, I remember it coming out last year and literally no one talked about this game at all. Like,
yeah, it came out on Game Pass as well. And it's just unfortunate because it is a really good role-playing game from top to bottom. It's very solid. So I hope more people get to check it out. It is on Switch and PlayStation and Xbox, so and it's on sale frequently. It plays really well on Switch as well. So I know Seth plays it over there, and he really enjoys it as well. So Fuga, yeah, really enjoy it.
Also, shout out to Skycatcher who points out in the chat, too bad no physical for Fuga.
Yeah, I guess they just didn't have the publisher or whatever to really get through physical copies of the game itself with Fuga. So unfortunately, it is digital only, but it is on all consoles and it's on sale frequently. I see it. I think it was like $40, like MSRP, but it goes down to 20, 25, and it's it's about I would say a 20-hour experience. Very well made, very solid game. So there you go. Nice.
Sounds like fun, man. Well, yeah, like that's a game that I should probably try and play at some point. But yeah,
and it has a good replayability. I would say the first run through, you're trying to understand why your characters lose, like in the boss levels. But once you beat the game, like, oh, I want to go back into this game the second time around, and there's like a new game plus deal, and really perfect the run. I think it's at least 2 runs of a game, and you'll be pretty satisfied with the overall game. So, anyways, there you go.
Nice, good answer, Garrett. Good answer, as Sean would say. All right. Well, speaking of good answers, my final game I wanted to highlight, of course, is the one everyone knows it's coming because I love Final Fantasy, especially Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, my favorite game I've played. Not even just my favorite RPG I played this year, but my favorite game I've played this year. Period. Regardless of whether or not it's a role-playing game or not. And This is a game that, coming into this year, I was not super excited about. I famously was on record earlier this year talking about this game where I was like, after the story changes and kind of the filler stuff in Final Fantasy VII Remake, I just was not excited about this one. Like I wanted to play it eventually, but like I was not like expecting it to blow me away or anything. But no, then this game blew me away. This game is genuinely fantastic. It in a lot of ways is kind of what I wanted from a Final Fantasy VII remake of that original game, where even though we're moving away from the turn-based combat, which I still feel like they could have done in a remade version, but I understand why they made that change. The combat itself is really, really fun to play in this game, and the main story of 7 Rebirth, oh my god, it does such a great retelling of the original game, but then adding stuff to it in a way that was not proper, like, because the problem with Remake was that they took 6 hours worth of story content, Garrett, and tried to turn it into a 30-hour game. And that, as you know, doesn't really work because they added so much fluff and there were so many like slow moments to the story that where you're just like, I just want the story to do something and go somewhere. Instead, I'm just out there playing with children in the slums, and I'm like, what am I doing in this game? Versus Rebirth, where they really focused on, you know, kind of all the open world sections. Like they took a 20-hour game, the 20-hour story from the base game, and then they turned it into like a 20-hour kind of game here. So they translated very much one-to-one. There were very few kind of downtime moments. Obviously, this game's biggest problem is its mini games. And how many mini games there are, because like Nagashaka and I actually joke a lot that there's actually more mini games in this game than Mario Party, and it's not wrong, because actually if you look at the mini game list, I think there's actually more mini games in this than a Mario Party game, which is just that should not be Final Fantasy VII's game, but that's all optional for the most part. There are, you know, times where you do have to do some of the mini games in the base game, like in the main campaign, but you don't have to do, like, most of that stuff's optional, which is nice. So just if you mainline the main campaign, I think you're going to have a fantastic time with this, especially if you're an OG Final Fantasy VII fan like I am. Like this game is beautiful. It has incredible music. It has some fantastic combat and enemy design. And just exploring the open world is super fun, especially for someone like me who played the original game and loved it and remembers a lot of the old locations. Like getting to walk up to see these towers you saw in the distance in the original game, but actually get to explore them where you couldn't do that in the base game, for example. Like that stuff is so cool. Like they did such a great job of recreating the original open world experience with this one.
Well, I'm glad people, and especially you, enjoying this game. I know everyone was really skeptical when, you know, it's like, oh, you're gonna remake this and you're gonna stretch out to 3 games. Like, what's going on with this? And I think they kind of proved. I mean, of course, they proved themselves with remake, Final Fantasy VII remake. I know a lot of people praise that game. Of course, there are criticisms, but yeah, Reborn just kind of reassures, like, yeah, this is a cool way to do a previous, I guess, classic or title, whatever. But it's very selective. Like, you know, it's for Final Fantasy VII. You're probably not gonna do it to any other Final Fantasy game. Stretch it out to 3 different games or whatever. Yeah. But you know, it's cool to see this come to life. I find it, I would say, like, you know, 10 years ago, I was like, this is unbelievable what you're going to do. You're going to remake it. You're going to stretch it out to 3 games, and it could be potentially up to 100 hours to 100% complete each game. And it's just like, that's crazy, but they're doing it. And the combat and the game itself, I'm hearing, is very impressive. So I'm glad Final Fantasy VII fans are really enjoying these.
Now, I'm gonna just come out there and say this though, because this is a big criticism that I have for it. Honestly, I feel like this should have just been 2 games instead of 3. I really, really do, because like that Midgard section at the beginning, that again is only like 5 or 6 hours in the base game at most. Like that's if you do everything kind of thing. Like which is what made the entirety of Remake. That should have just been the first 5 hours of this game, honestly. Like it should have just been the first zone. Because I feel like that would have really catapulted this more into the stratosphere of, you know, top tier games for me. So yeah, like I really, because then I feel like the pacing would have gone so much better, but also could have been like, it could have served as like a nice kind of tutorial area, I guess, like kind of having the like Midgard kind of be that area. And then it leads to kind of a little bit of a lesser, like a less awkward kind of transition. Plus it also is probably would be so much more amazing if you played through the Midgard sections, which might be a little more linear. But then when you finish Midgard, like the Midgard section at the beginning, it then expands to the big open world, and you're like, oh my God, look how big this world is. And then you can kind of go from there. Like, I feel like that if I was the one designing this game, that's what I would have done, because I think it would have really helped with the pacing of this. Okay,
cool, sounds good.
Yeah, but there we go. Those are our top games that we've played so far this year. Of course, I'm very excited, Garrett, because again, like I said, we're only like 5 months away from our Game of the Year special when we record this. So it's going to be interesting to see how this changes throughout the year, Garrett. And what RPGs even make the list? Because famously, last year on my Game of the Year list, no RPGs made the list. So, but I can already tell you that unless like 3 huge games that aren't RPGs come out, of course, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is going to be on my list, I think, by the end of the year. Like, it's obvious to me at this point. So
makes sense.
We'll find out. But, Garrett, of course, now we need to talk about the best RPGs of the year according to OpenCritic. And we're going to quickly kind of run through these. I grabbed the top 10 role-playing games from OpenCritic. And all these, again, range between 94 and 87. So pretty decent.
That's pretty good
stats. Of course, the top-rated RPG of the year is actually an expansion. It's Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree, which just came out. 94 on OpenCritic.
On my Fantasy Critic.
Oh my God.
Glad I picked that one.
I wish I could have picked that one, but the person before me in the turn order picked it, so I never got a chance. So, because I probably would have picked this actually, but
it's crazy.
Yeah. Shadow of the Erd Tree. I know a lot of people are really enjoying it, so that's there. Second highest rated was the one we just talked about, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth at 93. So there we go. Destiny 2: The Final Shape, surprising one at 91.
I'm glad that is, going out with a bang.
Yeah.
With Destiny 2. I know people were very hesitant of this last expansion, especially for the previous efforts, but it seems like Destiny is like that. It just goes in mountains and waves, and this is I'm glad for the Destiny fans out there getting a good expansion here.
Yeah, like I was mainly surprised by it, not because Destiny's not a good game or anything like that, but just with Lightfall last year, I remember that we picked, like Sean and I picked that in our Open Critic League, our Fantasy Cricket League, and it was like a 60. So
yeah, it was bad.
I was like I was very surprised to see a Destiny expansion score this high, but it's cool for Destiny fans. But next up we got Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth at 90. That's
People
a game
like
that's
that
on my
one.
shelf that I just haven't had a chance to play yet. But I got it when it was half off, so which is nice. And Darth Stridius, of course, chimes in and said, "Gonna say Yakuza, being it will be mentioned in the conversation, but for me, Shadow of the Erd Tree is my favorite RPG of the year so far."
Yeah, I'm hearing that a lot. Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree, and Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth. A lot of RPG fans really into both. And I'm glad that Like a Dragon is. I'm glad they went into the RPG kind of functions and world, and it seems like that's the strongest. It's stronger than Like a Dragon, so I'm glad that they're improving on it. And I'm very curious to see the next Yakuza game. I would like to go back to Like a Dragon for sure, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, this next one surprised me, Garrett. Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance with an 89. People really, really, really like this version of the game way more than the first one, which makes sense.
Yeah, it's an improved version, and it's apparently, according to the developers, this was the right way. This is the most appropriate, the most correct way. The previous story was a mistake. We shouldn't have done it. The game 4 years ago, it shouldn't have existed. This is our game. And I'm just like, oh, okay, sure, whatever.
Yeah, that actually really makes me want to play it. I know you got burned out with your experience, but like I never really played through this game. So like I kind of want to play through the Vengeance storyline.
And if it gets cheap enough, I would probably get the Steelbook edition of this game. But
it was on sale during Prime Day, but probably not cheap enough.
Not cheap enough. No. I just, if I get it, I wouldn't go to it. So I'm just gonna keep it until I think it's on Steam as well. So I might.
It's on Steam. Yeah.
I might pick it up over there way later. So
yeah.
Okay.
Another remake, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, at an 88. Even though it wasn't 60 frames per second, people like this one as well.
A lot of people like this one. It's interesting to hear it. I hear divisiveness with Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door more now than I heard a couple years ago. I think a lot of people really enjoyed this game as they were playing it on the GameCube, but I'm just hearing more and more newer people playing this game. It's like, it's kind of boring. That's what I'm hearing too. So, but yeah, I'm sure it's a very solid game. And I still would like to play it later on, but not anytime soon for me.
Yeah. Same. I actually have it because I had an extra Nintendo Switch voucher, so I actually claimed it.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So I do want to play it at some point because I still haven't played Thousand Year Door yet. So I do want to give it a chance at some point. But I know like Skycatcher just chimes in here saying Thousand Year Door was amazing, almost S tier for me. The mechanics are great. So yeah. It seems like a cool game. But speaking of cool games, Garrett, again, we've got a trio of 88s here. Unicorn Overlord, the only really new IP on here. But I saw you picked it up. Finally.
I did pick it up.
You're part of the Unicorn Overlord fandom.
I caved in, grabbed Unicorn Overlord on the Switch. I'm very excited to get into this whenever I get to it after Trials of Mana, Final Fantasy VII Classic. This will be my next Switch game to get into. So,
nice.
Yeah.
I am much excited, Garrett. I am much excited for you to play Unicorn Overlord. I still need to finish it. I think that maybe might be next after I'm done the Third Age. Is maybe going back to Unicorn Overlord. And then I kind of want to get to. I actually kind of want to play like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I want to try it because like that's a game like maybe I wasn't in the right mind space for Yakuza Like a Dragon when I played it, but like maybe Infinite Wealth can get me, and that's what I'm hoping. So next up, Persona 3 Reload. We talked about it earlier. 88, pretty solid game. You don't need to hear more of us that. Dragon's Dogma 2. 87, Garrett.
87.
The game that Garrett dropped famously.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it.
I think it has its shortcomings. I understand people liking the game, and there's certain highlights that are really, really strong, especially the adventure and the pacing and the combat of the game is really good, but everything else is kind of mediocre, or I think they were just leaning on some aspects of the game a little too much and not so much with others. And ultimately, that's why I dropped the game. I still had fun with the game, but I think I did stop at a point where I was like, I'm just not in the mood of playing this. I'm not having fun anymore. So I'm just going to, just drop it. And it's not a bad game. I just think there's just some aspects of it. It's just not for me, not fun. So there you go. And you're on me, Ryan.
Oh, so I realized I was muted. There's that's a game that like I looked at the beginning of the year, Garrett. I was like, do I try this game? And then after hearing you talk about it and then seeing other people talk about it, I'm like, nah, I'm good.
Honestly, I went back to Dragon's Dogma 1 for like a couple hours after I played this game. I'm like, yeah, there's something different about this. There's a little bit just more character in Dragon's Dogma 1, even though it's dated mechanics or whatever. It's just there's just a little bit more in terms of just the snappiness of the action, and then also a little bit more just I would say crafting and the world building is a little bit more versus 2.
Yeah. Also, I love Yarden's comment here. Mostly these are Square or Sega properties. Episode idea for y'all: Sega versus Square Enix RPG battle to the death. That's a funny idea, actually. We should do an episode like that where it's like compare. We did that debate episode once, Garrett. Maybe we do like a debate where we like each of us take like a company and then go back and forth.
Sure. That sounds good.
That's an interesting idea. Also, just wanted to point out the fact that, and I never thought we'd ever lived the day to see this, but 1, 2, 3, 4 of the top 10 RPGs of the year are from Sega. which is just a weird sentence to say.
They're going strong, man. It's kind of crazy to see, especially Atlas. Like,
that's true. The Atlas has had just a dynamite year with 3 games, huge RPGs.
And then you got Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, which is the strong, like people are like, that's the best Yakuza
And we
game.
still have Metaphor this year too.
We have Metaphor, and that's going to be a strong Atlas game as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last one, of course, we got to give the Falcom Empire their due to get. The Legend of Heroes Trail Through Daybreak makes number 10 at 87.
Mm-hmm. Good for them. And I think this one looks unique enough. It's not like really as similar as the other ones, especially because it's a mix of action and turn-based combat. So good for them. I hear this one's pretty strong as well. And we'll see when I get to the Falcon Bros. And
one day.
700 hours a game. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's quickly tee up the rest of the games coming out this year, starting with Cat S3 Tales of the Caribbean.
My goodness.
August 8th. That's an action RPG, Garrett. It technically counts. Counts. I mean, it's there. And oh my God, I just had to mention Falcom. They're all coming out of the woodwork here.
Oh, okay.
No. We've also got SteamWorld Heist 2 coming out on August 8th.
Oh man, this one was a weird one. It got announced on Game Pass and now it's not. So
that's very weird.
It's a very weird thing going on with that game. I love the first one. I love SteamWorld Heist, but man, if it's not coming to Game Pass, I just have too many other games to get through. So
I was gonna say this list is very long. So like I'm not gonna have time for stuff that I'm not like kind of all in on with this. But next up, we got World of Warcraft: The War Within, August 26th. I'm very excited about this. But also is Final Fantasy VIII is Life, Final Fantasy VIII is Love, who says, let's not forget that we have a banger of an MMO expansion still to come this year. World of Warcraft: The War Within is shaping up to be a great experience. I actually agree with Awesome Dave on this one, Garrett, because this expansion looks like it's going to be very solid. And it's going to be kind of doing like the Avengers Endgame kind of thing, where it's like we've got like a final trilogy of expansions for World of Warcraft that are going to kind of wrap up the story for World of Warcraft. And this is kind of the start of that. So I am actually very, very excited about this as someone who's been playing WoW since 2004. So,
nice.
Yeah. And Visions of Mana, August 29th. You and I are both pretty excited about this one, I think. So
I probably wouldn't get it day one, but I'm curious about the reviews of this game. Yeah.
Whereas I'm just day one. I love the Mana games, so I'm just like, please just give me that game. We got Demon School coming out on September 13th. This is a really interesting looking indie RPG that I remember seeing during the Summer Game Fest. We talked about it more there. Yeah. But it looks really cool.
It looks really, really cool. I actually am looking forward to how this goes in reviews.
Yeah.
For sure.
Next up, we got Diablo 4 Vessel of Hatred. That's the new expansion for Diablo 4 coming out on October 8th. I'm probably not day one on this one, but I am interested in playing it at some point, Garrett, because it comes out the same day as Silent Hill 2. And I'm gonna put my day one energy into Silent Hill 2, I think, instead of this.
Makes sense. Cool.
Yeah, I'm interested. But then 3 days later, Garrett, Metaphor ReFantasio, October 11th. We were all very excited about this one. This game from Atlas. It looks like it's Persona, but very different. And yeah, we're both day one. Slam dunk. New World is getting a new expansion called Eternum, which is also coinciding with a console release of New World. Coming out on October 15th. I know a lot of people like New World. I never tried it out, but now that's coming to console, maybe I try it out.
It's cool. I like the third person action mechanics of this game. It's very solid. So yeah, I'm interested when it comes out on console as well.
Yeah. Next up, we got Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven. That is coming out on October 24th. I know, Garrett, you're sick of these Saga games, but this one actually looks pretty cool.
Yeah, this one looks really cool. I liked seeing the trailer of this. I think any other Romancing Saga games, I was just like, whatever. This looks kind of boring, but this one looks really good. So I'm curious how this goes.
Yeah. Next we got Ease 10 Nordics, October 25th. A lot of the Falcom Empire is also very excited about this one too.
I'm sure.
But also, like, I'm more interested in something like this versus Tales Through Daybreak, I think. Because, like, I think the Ease games are just easier to get into, I think.
I agree. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Next up, we got Formagia, the passive-sounding farming role-playing game coming out on November 4th, or November 1st. Please be excited. about that.
What a name. Formagia.
Farmagia.
I can't. I can't even say it with a straight face. So, who's this by again? Is this Square or?
It's not Square. It's a different company. I will fact check while you look it up. Oh, it's Marvelous. Marvelous is making this one.
Oh, okay. Well, and this is one of those raised vegetables or like farms.
You have your own farm, but then you use the farming goods to power your
monsters,
gear
right?
empire to then go on adventures.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And you can name monsters.
There's Fantasy Life about to come out.
That's true.
I don't know if they have a date though. Actually.
Yeah, that's why any games that didn't have a definitive date I left off this list.
Okay.
We'll probably talk about those later.
Yeah.
Or we talked about a lot of those as well without dates during the Summer Game Fest episodes as well.
For sure.
Next up, Mario and Luigi Brothership, November 7th. We're both
wait.
excited about that one. We talked about that on the last 2 weeks ago episode. Same with Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake, November 14th, a week later. Both very excited about this one as well.
Yeah, day one for sure.
The following day, Assassin's Creed Shadows comes out. Of course, that is the next Assassin's Creed RPG, which I am day one on. That game looks awesome.
Cool.
And then last but not least, we got Fairy Tail 2, which is set for December 1st, but they said that date is in flux. And that game looks really cool. So I wanted to make sure to highlight it here. Well,
nice.
Garrett, it is now time to party up. Let's get through the NPCs questions real quick to end the show. We're going to start with Skycatcher Reflecting, who says, best new IP for sure this year is Unicorn Overlord. Persona 3 Reload is the best game overall for me, and Paper Mario 1000 Year Door was my most surprising game. The hype is real. So,
nice. 3 strong games right there. Strong RPGs this year. So.
100%, man. Kevin Ainsworth says 2024 has truly been the year of JRPGs. I think Infinite Wealth is still my game of the year, but add in amazing games like Rebirth, Unicorn Overlord, and now Trails Through Daybreak. Looking forward to Visions of Mana, Metaphor Refantasio, and even Dragon Quest III Remake. But I want to know, is this year the best year of JRPGs ever?
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know.
I don't know about that either. I mean, I didn't have enough time to go back and research, but I will say 1994 comes to mind for me as a really strong year for JRPGs, with Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger releasing the same year, along with other
strong
JRPGs that came out that year too. That was a really strong year. Even some of those PlayStation years as well, like the PS1 had some really strong years, or PS2. There's that. I'd have to go back and look, but
for sure.
This could be up there. I think for this console generation, 100% it's the best one.
I agree with that. I think there's a lot of diversity in the JRPGs as well this year compared to previous years. So in terms of, let's say, style diversity, I can get behind that being the strongest year for JRPGs. And I think it's I would say the past 3 or 4 years, there's a huge renaissance of JRPGs going on. So yeah, I'm glad it's going really strong. Can't wait to play Unicorn Overlord. Yeah. And yeah.
Even something Skycatcher mentions here. Oh, I haven't heard. I also heard Grand Blue Fantasy Relink was a great too. Yeah. I mean, that's another game. Like I said, there were so many games that I had to even leave off the Open Critic top games of the year. Even there's a lot of really good.
And it's not necessarily JRPGs, but you got Dragon's Dogma 2, and then there's what was it, The Rise of the Ronin. Even though it's more action based, but it's these kind of games that are a lot of RPG element focused, made by Japanese studios. I think it's really strong this year for sure.
And the last question comes to us from Ryu, who says, to contrast what you think the best RPGs of the year are, what has been the worst RPG you've played this year? This year has been great so far. Persona 3 reaffirmed my love for Persona 3, and it will continue to be my favorite in the series. Unicorn Overlord was super addictive, and Trails Through Daybreak is also top tier as well, as a great starting point for newcomers to the Trail series. Can't wait for Ys 10 later this year to see what Ed all gets up to next. So Garrett, what do you think the worst RPG that we've played this year has been? Because for me, that's the thing. I haven't really played a bad RPG this year because I just haven't played a ton of RPGs this year to begin with. So I don't think I actually have an answer to this question because I just haven't really played a bad RPG this year. But what do you think, man?
I don't think I played a bad RPG either. I think in terms of just my experience with Dragon's Dogma 2, it was just unpleasant at the end. And I think, man, there's just some mechanics where I'm like, you could have streamlined this a little more. I was just a little disappointed. Well, other than fast traveling, but just the fact that the autosaves could soft lock you in certain playthroughs, and I hear stories of like, oh man, I'm stuck. I'm gonna have to restart the game because of this. I find that disappointing a little bit, but at the same time, it was a very strong, very good, well-made RPG. There was just some aspects I wish they did a little bit better. So again, I would say it's like, oh man, it's so bad. It's a bad RPG, but it was probably the least fun RPG experience I've had this year, for sure.
Yeah, it's too bad, man. I know, like I said, I know that you were really looking forward to that game too. So
yeah,
but actually, I will say I came up with an answer, Garrett. The worst RPG experience I had this year was playing the Saga Emerald Beyond demo. That quite possibly was one of the worst RPG experiences I've had in many years, let alone this year. So
yeah, I hear it's rough. That one came and went. It got released. No, I don't even see it on sale or like it's out. Like I don't any reviews. That just really came and went. I couldn't believe it, actually, how hidden that was.
I mean, it was something. It was a release that came out this year, and that will be that. I mean, don't get me wrong. Maybe the full game is better, but that demo was really rough, and I'm glad I did not put money into it. But Garrett, we got to get out of here. But before we go, of course, we got to thank all of our patrons over at patreon.com/Carpool Gaming, starting with our ultimate producers, Jonathan Brown, the man behind the music on the Xbox Drive and the PlayStation Drive. You can find the link tree to all of his music at linktr.ee/PME/JIB. And Cwagmire, who humbly reminds you that the best babes are in fact Xenobabes. Our platinum producers, Smokin Joe, the Captain and Tim Paullin, and our gold members, Adam K, Anna, Awesome Dave 1337, BobLoblaw, Brad Moore, Brian Reese, Cecily Carrozza, CowboyDangerD, Dan and Luma, Dannohh, Drellesh, Emily O'Kelly, Hoppel, Jan32, Kia Savoy, Patrice Mallette, Peje P, Shane Erickson, Tick Mike, and Tim Aulph. Huge thank you once again to all of our patrons over at patreon.com/Carpool Gaming. Of course, if you want to head on over there and hop in the cars with us, choose the tier that's right for you. And now, Garrett Plugs go.
You can follow me on Twitter at Blind Explosion. You can also see me in the Discords. I read every single message in the RPG Cave. Yes, even you, Falcon Bros. I read every single message. So I love y'all. You guys, thank you for all the support on the RPG Cave. And yeah, that's pretty much it, right?
Very nice, my friend. As for me, you can always find me over on X at Ryan Turford. You can also find us on X or Twitter at Carpool Gaming, right here at youtube.com/Carpool Gaming. Of course, over on Twitch, twitch.tv/Carpool Gaming Live, and of course, podcast services around the globe. So for Garrett Bland, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been the 146th level of the RPG Cave. Only 4 more levels, Garrett, until 150. And we're out.
Bye-bye.